Hey, it's Rod Yates. Welcome to another episode of Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. Each episode, I talk to a music creator or industry professional about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey, and the lessons they've learned. And my special guest today is Australian singer-songwriter Pete Murray. Ever since he released his major label debut album Feeler in 2003, Pete has been a mainstay of the Australian music scene. One of the interesting things about his story is that he didn't even pick up a guitar until he was 22, and he was 30 when he released his debut independent album called The Game. By today's standards, Pete is very much a late starter, having spent his youth focusing on sport to the point where he almost represented Australia in rugby union sevens. Pete walks us through his story here and the tragedies that set him on his path to being a musician, but we started by talking about his latest EP, Before I Go, which is the follow-up to his 2021 EP, The Night. And so these songs were the first time that you've written with outside songwriters, is that the case? I know you went to LA and Nashville in England, but this was the first time you actually did co-writing sessions, is that correct?
Yeah, I'd done one session before with John Hume.
Right.
I was going to say another Aussie, but he's actually a Kiwi.
Yeah.
So from Evermore, and John and I are good mates, and we got together and I did a session with him. I did two songs, which made the Camacho album, the last album, which came out in 2017. Mm-hmm. So that was my first real experience of songwriting, and to go overseas and do it was challenging, I think, for me, because I wasn't that experienced with writing with other people. With myself, you've got time, you can take your time. If there's no pressure, I think overseas, you're with someone for pretty much one day. Mm. And there's also that fear of like, am I going to be the one that's not coming up with anything? Am I going to be the one that's going to be letting this song down? And so my first session I did over there, I pretty much wrote 90% of the song the night before because I was so nervous about going in there with just not having anything.
Yeah.
That I went in there and had this song pretty much all done. And as I went through it, I was like, okay, that wasn't really a songwriting session because I kind of did the whole thing. So the next session I did was like, I just went in with nothing, nothing at all, and just sat there and let's just see what we can come up with, and that was really good because it was just two of us working together, and so I just kind of relaxed into it a little bit, and I think lost my fear of my ability, and my I guess trust your own lyrics that you're writing, and that they're interesting enough, and people were enjoying them, and that's the thing that I found as I went along. I became more confident. I went to Nashville, and Nashville's the sort of place, it's like a machine. These guys get together and they churn out songs, sometimes 2-3 a day. Mm. If you're good, then you get asked to go on other writing sessions through other guys. And so I did my first session. From that, I had other sessions come up, and I did another one, and suddenly it was just like, bang, everyone just went, we love what you're doing, let's just get together. So I was only there for about 4 or 5 days. Wasn't enough, but that was a really good thing for me to go, good for my confidence to go there. Everyone was really loving that and really wanted to work with me. So it was a good experience. I
was going to say that validation must have really meant something to you, particularly given that lack of confidence you had at the beginning.
Well, I think, you're writing songs with some of these guys who've had American number one hits, and so I guess I've never had an American hit. So I've never, I've sort of haven't really had much music in America at all. So I think you kind of just think, well, these guys are really good, and that's what they do. They get these songs that, get these big hits. So, but everyone's the same. When you get in the room, you're just doing the same thing, and you're all songwriters, and no one thinks they're any better than anyone else. You just kind of, as long as you're enjoying it, that's the main thing.
Right.
And, and it was really, everyone I worked with was great fun.
Did it change your perspective on songwriting or open your eyes to different ways of doing things?
Oh, of course, yeah. I think, definitely with using different ideas that people have, because you do get stuck a little bit in your own genre and then what you do and your style and the way that you sing and even some lyrics that you use. So suddenly you got some other guys in there, and, especially in Nashville, there's like a hint of country that was coming into the songs, and that I kind of smoothed out a little bit. I just didn't think that I didn't want to be too country. So, but there was definitely this country flavour that these guys have over there, and it was, which is great. So it definitely just changes your perspective of what you do and how you do things. And I think that was the interesting thing about it was just being in the room with these guys that could just throw a different idea that you wouldn't think of.
Yeah.
Or a melody that I hadn't even thought of, and suddenly they do that and then you're off, So it's it's great.
Yeah, and there's a nice contrast to that, I guess, country twang that you were starting to hear in the music is when you start collaborating with someone like Nick Littlemore on the song Burning Up.
Yep.
Nick, of course, from Empire of the Sun and Pinyao. How did that, because I believe he produced that song, how did that relationship start?
Yeah, Nick and I share the same tour manager and mixer.
Okay.
So for front of house mixer. So Jimmy Foster's his name. So Jimmy's a great mate of both of ours, and he put us in touch with each other because he said, look, you're both really easygoing fellas. You'd be really great together. So Nick came to Byron, and he said he'd been wanting to sort of produce something. Nick's the sort of guy that he's so talented, I think, he just wants to work with different artists, and he's been wanting to produce something for me for a long time. And so we got together, and I said, look, here's a bit of music that I've got. What do you think? Where do we start? What do we do? And he took one of the verses of one of the songs that I'd written, sped it up, to dance tempo.
Yeah.
And the way he worked really interests me a lot, because I don't work like that. He was just basically he sped that up, he put some beats on it, and then we put some bass lines down for the song. So suddenly, just with the beats and the bass line and this verse, the song that I had, it suddenly was a different song. And then Nick was like, okay, just do lyrics, do melodies, whatever you got, just do a whole bunch of whatever.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, great. Suddenly this different beast was emerging, this kind of a dance vibe in there, which I love. I still like dance music. I don't sing it myself because it's what I do, I guess. But I was really into it. And, I just felt that that's his world. And suddenly I just went into his world. And so my world then was to do the melody and lyrics. And I was like, here's the melody and lyrics for this song. And it just sort of came out. And he's just had all these amazing ideas for, when I do keys in a song, I kind of just have, here's the one or two keyboard parts, and that's kind of it. Nick's got so many different key sounds and samples and beautiful tones and all these little kind of they've all got little beats to them as well, which is just like, wow, just opened my world up to what these guys do in the dance world, because that electronic thing it's a massive sound,
Yeah.
It's just a wall of in this particular song was just keys, So then taking that, we had just the keys and the bass and drums, which was still very, very dancey. I added some acoustic and electric. The song was quite funny. It's, starting in my studio in my world with the verse, and suddenly it's gone into the dance world, and then it's kind of come back to the acoustic and electric parts, and I sort of sent it back to Nick, and then he sort of put more layers of keys, and it was dance, and he mixed it a little bit too. I was like, wow, that's really dance again. So we got it back again. And I just said, look, I think I've got to do this with a little bit more kind of Pete Murray vibe to it so that it works for me live.
Right.
But I would be really keen on doing something with Nick down the track where we could, experiment and really do something that is dance. It probably wouldn't be a Pete Murray record, but it'd be something different, I think.
I guess a lot of the lyrics on Before I Go seem to deal with love and possibly even being helped by someone's love. But then you've got the final song, Kingdom, which it seems to be, lyrically a very emotional song about someone I believe you probably lost. Who you lost. What inspired that song?
That is I forgot about that song. That's the only song that was written prior to the songs off these two EPs. It's a moody song, but it kind of feels like, for me, it's a song that you could play at a wedding. It's powerful. The lyrical parts of the verse are really powerful because it is about loss and not being able to be together, but the possibility of being together, like what's happening. And then the chorus is, I think it's just a beautiful part where it could work at a wedding, about, it's all about love, how much you feel for someone.
Yeah. So I've completely misinterpreted that song in terms of it being about someone who
That's
had
right. Well,
passed away.
I mean, I think it's sometimes, when you're writing lyrics, things can take a turn as well. You can write some lyrics that do start to take you down a path of leading someone to think that someone has passed away, or that this is never going to happen again. And, but then I like to sort of have that sort of positive twist at the end of a song. Like Better Days is a really good example of that, of having something that has been, quite a melancholy song in a way that it's quite hard lyrically what it's about, what you're going through in life, but just knowing that once you get through that, it will be better. Things will get easier. You'll be stronger. So it's kind of helping people to understand that you can get through things and you will get into a better place. Where
did that positivity come from? Is it something you've always had?
I think, Yeah, look, I have always been fairly positive with myself, and I used to do a lot of sports. So I think you've got to be fairly positive with what you're doing and believing in yourself and all those things. I think when I did the Feeler album, going back a few years now, back to 2003, that was recorded. I think the first song might have come out in 2003 as well, late 2003. There was a lot of, and some of those songs were written before. I wrote some songs for Feeler, but there's a couple of old ones there that were a bit more kind of melancholy ones that were hanging around for a while. And I didn't think they actually should be on the album. Mm-hmm. Songs like So Beautiful, which was a big hit. Another song called No More, which was about domestic violence, and I thought that's just way too heavy. But I think after writing that album, it was a little bit darker and a little bit more melancholy in parts. And then Feeler, for example, was a new song written just before I recorded that album. So Feeler is quite joyous, It's about finding a soulmate. So I had these heavy songs that were on that album. I struggled with for a while singing them live because I'd moved on from that. And I was writing a lot of songs back then when my dad died when I was 18. He was only 47. And I still had a lot of that grief that I was writing about with that loss of him that was sort of coming through into these songs. And I wanted to get away from that. So when See the Sun came out, songs like Opportunity and Better Days were two big singles off that. Opportunity is all so positive. It's about if you're not happy in life, find your exit, find your way out of what you're in and make it positive. And that was really a big thing for me to play that song live is feels good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some of the other heavy ones was like, I'm happy to kind of leave them, but I'm okay with them now. I still play them live and it's okay. But,
yeah,
it's where you go in your life. And I write songs about, where I'm at in life.
So it's interesting that you have that desire for optimism, but when you're writing some of those darker songs, there's obviously a part of you somewhere deep down that perhaps doesn't have quite that optimistic bent. And it sounds like you've had to work to I guess, channel the more optimistic side of you through your music.
Yeah, well, look, doing music too, my story, I was quite late getting into music. I didn't pick a guitar up until I was 22. I was doing natural medicine. Once I picked the guitar up, I kind of wanted to play that more. I was still right into my sport. I loved athletics and rugby, and I was had a knee injury in rugby, which kind of which ended my sporting days quite young. I was 23.
And you were serious at rugby. You were Wallabies 7.
I was a chance of making that off the team.
Right.
Yeah, and probably because I come off I know it's because I was doing athletics, so I was running 8s and 4s. So I was way more fitter than a lot of the other rugby guys at that stage, so I could play the 7s game and I could last the whole game. And so I was probably, starting to shine out in that game a little. And there was a chance of making an Australian side to go to the Hong Kong Sevens. And I injured my knee during one of the trials for that, so I couldn't go. And so that was sort of disappointing. But, taking up music, like I said, getting back to when I picked up the guitar, I still had that really positive attitude and the drive that I had when I was doing sport, athletics and rugby. I wanted to be successful, and I knew I could be successful. I just had this belief that I could do it, even though the older I was getting a little bit scary because I was, by the time I started to write music, probably getting close to, mid-20s, 25, I guess, 26. And then I had released my independent album at the age of 30, which is, quite old to do when you're doing that sort of thing, I guess. And I was really focused on it. It wasn't a fun thing for me. It was just when I say fun thing, it was something I was really serious about, where some guys will have another job. Music will be fun and they can do that on the side. This was my job. And I really wanted to have a good crack at it. So I was 30. I moved to Melbourne from Brisbane, probably the toughest 2 years of my life down there, I think. And that's where I think a lot of the doom and gloom and the melancholy came from as well. I think the anxiety I was feeling, just not sure why I was doing this music, because I wasn't earning any money. I couldn't even afford to buy myself lunch some days. It was just a real mission to do it. And I'm 30. A lot of my mates were at that stage had were having good jobs, were starting to have families, and I had nothing, and I was thinking I was wasting my time. But I couldn't give up on it, and I got to the point where I hadn't quite finished my studies, and I thought I ran the college again. I thought I'll go back and finish this off, because that's where, I don't think music's going to work. So I got a job working in with some young kids in resi care, which was great. Just took my mind off music for a while. And I started to get the uni things happening again. I thought I'd go back and finish uni. And then I got a call from Sony. And they'd read a review that was in the Australian about the independent album. And it was just, you know, the review was a great one. Just sort of said, look, this guy could be massive if a major, whoever wrote it now, they said that this guy could be, I'd really like to see where this guy could go if a major label got behind him.
Right. And
so from that, I got a call from Sony, and suddenly things kind of changed around a bit. There was some interest, so I got a bit more hope up again. And then that fizzled again. So I was back, you know, that had just kind of gone away, and I think at that stage they weren't too sure about it. But look, in the end, all these things just lined up at the one time. About 2 years earlier, I had gone in through another friend of mine in Brisbane. They said, we've got someone that works in the accounts department at Sony, so do you mind if I send this little 4-track CD to him? I said, yeah, go for it.
Right.
So they set that down, and I didn't think anything more of it. So then roughly 2 years later, the album was out, and when I sent the independent album to Stu McCulloch, who was working in A&R at the time, and so Stu had sort of sent that to the guys in Sydney. Stu was based in Melbourne. So the guys in Sydney had, Stu was sort of hassling, not that I knew this, but Stu was going, hey, have you checked this Pete Murray album out? It's really good. And so they said, look, we've lost it. Can you get us another one? And I'm like, so Stu's come back and said, can you get me another one? I'm going, Stu, man, I'm an independent artist. I'm broke. Come on. So I said, please don't lose this one. So anyway, I gave that to him, but they lost it again. And so anyway, but at the same time, Stu was talking to the guys from Sydney, and the Sydney guys said, hey, look, we've lost the album, but we've got this other 4-track thing that someone's had in the office here for like 2 years or 18 months, whatever it's been. And it's a few songs in there by a guy called Pete Murray. Is that the same Pete Murray that you're talking about? And Stu's like, I have no idea. No idea. So they basically got together and worked out it was the same guy. And I think after that, it all just kind of lined up, and, you know, ended up getting to come up to Sydney and play some songs for the guys. And then the next was kind of history after that.
Wow. There's a lot to talk about in that in that history.
But that 2 years, as we talk about, you know, the melancholy stuff, I think coming through, there's a bit of it that was still in that 2 year period writing songs, and it's not an easy job to do. I think it's probably the hardest job to do.
Yeah.
You know, to try and, because there's no guarantees. You can spend a lot of time writing songs. There's no guarantees that you're going to be successful at all. And it's a really tricky thing. And lots of people fail in music. You know, it's a really tough thing. So for me, that was, like I said, when I moved to Melbourne, there was a lot of anxiety, and I didn't realise I used to hate going to sleep at night time, because I knew I'd wake at 3 a.m, sweating, just drenched in sweat. And it was a fear that I used to have for going to sleep at night. So I can laugh about it now.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was a pretty scary thing, because I think just the age I was too, you know, I was just worried about where I doubted myself at times. And then other times, you know, you would be confident. You'd go, no, this is going to work. Keep at it and don't give up.
Yeah. How do you find that confidence though? I mean, you mentioned that you'd sort of started talking to uni again about going back and enrolling there. You've clearly got a good plan B if you want it. But for a couple of years there, you didn't take that. That takes the drive, I guess you were talking about from your sporting career.
Well, and I didn't take it because I just wanted to focus on music 100%. You know, my days were songwriting. Through the week, I'd be songwriting, and that was really what I wanted to do. So I couldn't see myself having time to do any uni or anything like that. That wasn't going to be there. And plus, I'd also thought about this. You know, I thought, look, where I'm going to be is working in a clinic somewhere, dealing with people's problems, fixing injuries and whatever it was. And I thought, I really want to be outside. I want to be traveling the world. This is what I want to do. So early on, you know, because my dad died young, I remember just thinking, he had worked his whole life. He just sold his business. He was a watchmaker jeweler. He just sold his business, and he'd worked for 12 months for the new guy that had bought the business from him. And Dad and Mum had just bought a caravan, and they were about to travel around Australia and move from Chinchilla, which is a small country town 4 hours west of Brisbane. They're going to move from Chinchilla and go to live at the Sunshine Coast, which I thought was great for them, you know, just to get them out of the country area and go and live at the coast, which is a beautiful part of Queensland. And then 2 weeks after he had sort of semi-retired, he had a heart attack and died. So I I was angry about that, but I also remember saying to myself, that's not going to happen to me. I'm going to make sure that I do what I want to do in life. I'm going to make sure that I'm happy and that I have time to do things, because it's the lack of time that most people don't get when you're working all the time, and you're working for someone else or whatever you have to do. So for me, I was like, I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to find a job that I can travel the world. I'm going to have lots of free time on my hands. I don't know what that job is yet, but I've got to find it.
Right.
So I remember thinking back then, and I had started doing some studies, and I took some time off, and that's when I travelled for 12 months, backpacked, as what a lot of Aussies do. And during that time, that's when I just bought a guitar, and I travelled around and met buskers, and I learnt so much from street performers, and I was just suddenly sort of immersing myself into this music culture that I didn't. At first, I didn't think that was the job. I didn't think that anything of it. It's just that I loved it.
Yeah.
And I was just enjoying it. So, but for me, as I went on, I just remember thinking that years ago that wasn't going to happen to me. So I wanted to be having the success and doing what I want to do. So, I was prepared to sort of give everything up to try and make that happen. And
right.
But the fear of failure was starting to creep in a little bit, and that's when I started to call up.
Yeah.
Get back into uni again and try and finish everything off.
Right. And clearly music is something that you loved. But growing up in Chinchilla, which I think you mentioned was 4 hours out of Brisbane, so quite a rural area in Queensland. Where do you discover music? What kind of music are you hearing that's first turning you on?
There was a station out there called 4GR. So that's really all we listened to. And Mum and Dad's record collection, which was, Dad was a country music fan. He loved Charlie Pride and, the country music singers. He was kind of into that. They liked Neil Diamond. I kind of connected with Neil Diamond going through their vinyl. And so that was really where I heard music. But the 4GR stuff was kind of, commercial radio for the country areas. It was just, it's what you heard, I guess, all the pop hits. So I was just mad about sport. Music was kind of like something that I'd listen to, but I didn't really sort of think much about it.
Yeah.
And it was just really all about sport. I was a swimmer, did athletics, played footy, and I just did whatever I could because I just loved being outside and being active.
Yeah. Were you? Is that what you do for kicks in Chinchilla? Is it sport, or there's not a lot else?
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think because I left there when I was 16. I went to boarding school for grade 11, 12 at Nudgee College in Brisbane. That was a good change too from, coming from a small country town. And, I was eager to get out, eager to try and, learn more, go and live in the city, compete on sporting levels, compete against the top guys in Brisbane, Queensland, in Australia. So that was what I was keen on doing. So still, music was something I hadn't really thought of, and even I remember doing music in grade 8, 9 and 10, in Chinchilla, and I was probably the kid that was mucking around in the class. I didn't really take it seriously, and so to be the one that sort of had success in music is a bit of an odd thing now when I look back at it those days.
We'll be back with more from Pete after this short break. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Pete Murray. So when you do finally pick up the guitar, what are you playing? Are you immediately drawn to songwriting? Are you trying to just mimic the guitarists that you love? What are you doing when you first pick up the instrument?
Yeah, when I first started playing music, as I said, I didn't know that music was going to be the thing that was going to be me, and was going to be the thing that was going to take me around the world and give me time to spend with my kids and my family. I had no idea that's what it was going to be until a few years later. But I'll take you back to when I was studying. There's a friend of mine called Charlie Clark, and he was studying teaching, and I was doing natural medicine, and he came into my room one day and just said, you know what, I'm really excited. I'm going to go and get some guitar lessons. I've always wanted to play the guitar, and I'm going to go and do it. At this stage, Charlie was 31 or something like that, 30 maybe. And I was about 20 to 22. And I went, wow, that sounds really cool. I said, I've never thought about playing music at all, but that sounds great, And he said, yeah, I'm going to go and do it. I'm going to get some lessons. And so I went, that sounds really cool. Maybe I might do the same thing. So I called a friend whose brother had a guitar, and I said, do you think I can just borrow your guitar for a few months and just see if I can pick this thing up? So he said, yeah, sure. So I got that. So it turns out I went and had a few lessons and Charlie didn't.
Right.
But he got me started. And I'm a big believer in fate. And I believe I was meant to meet him and he was meant to get me on this path of music. And we were great mates. After not seeing him for a while, he went and started teaching at the Gold Coast. And he came to Brisbane. He said, I'm back in town. I said, hey, mate, come into my place. I want to show you something. And we were big Neil Young fans. So he came and he had no idea that I could play the guitar at this stage. And I just got the guitar out and played Like a Hurricane, Neil Young, and then Heart of Gold or whatever. That's just Neil Young. And he was just like, wow. He was so stoked, to see me doing that. So happy. And I said, man, it's because of you that I'm doing this, and loving it. So, and about 6 months later, he had an aneurysm and passed away.
Right.
But I named my first son Charlie after him. So, but we were, super close. And, like I said, I think I was meant to meet that guy and he was meant to get me on this path. And so it was, it was a shame he passed away so young, but there's a big influence in my life.
It's I guess another lesson that life is short. That lesson that you learned from your father gets, reinforced by Charlie's sad passing, which does that then again play into your determination to, when you're starving in Melbourne, I'm just going to keep at this?
Yeah, well, that gets me on to the songs that I was playing, the question you asked earlier. So what did I start playing? So Neil Young was really, a big thing. Charlie and I loved that, and I just started to learn all these Neil Young songs first. I started playing the harmonica and then the acoustic, and it's just suddenly my world opened up. It's like, wow, this is really great, and got to the point when I could play to some other friends, because I pretty much sat in my bedroom for about two years or so just playing on my own. Didn't want to play in front of anyone. And then I remember having another friend come around, and I was early on, and I said, I'll try and see if you can work this song out. And I was just terrible. I just couldn't get it. And it was Heart of Gold by Neil Young. He said, no, I can't get it. Sorry, play it again. No, I can't get it. Play it again. I'm going, okay, come back in a few months. I'll see if I can get better at it. So, but, I got to the point where I could play these songs, and I knew I could play them really well. So then I had some friends going, look, this is after I had a trip overseas and came back and backpacked for 12 months. I had some friends saying, look, you get to the point where you're getting really good, like you should go and get a couple of gigs and doing some covers. So I played in one bar, basically. It was Dooley's Hotel in Brisbane. I did that for about 2 years on a Friday night. And I would just play all the songs that I love, Bob Dylan and Bob Marley, Neil Young, all this kind of old stuff that was, it's great, Simon and Garfunkel. And during that period is where I kind of thought, at first, hey, this is really cool. Like, doing the covers thing's great. I could do this for a long time and earn some good money, or a couple $100 a night, I just thought that was pretty good. But it was about 3 months into that, I went, this sucks. Like, this is playing to a bunch of drunks and they just want the same songs all the time. And I went, okay. And that's when I think it hit me that I thought, I've got to, if I want to actually do this as a job, the only way I'm going to actually make some good money and a living is to actually write my own music. So that's when I started to play on Friday nights and Saturdays at Dooley's. And through the week, it was just Monday through to Friday, I would be sitting there writing songs all day long. And that's where for 2 years, I just pretty much wrote songs and trying to get the art of writing a song, because it's not an easy thing to just pick up and do.
No.
You can't just, and there's a lot of very average songs, in the early days that you just kind of just keep trying to get the art of working it out. And I remember the very first day, because I remember whatever happened, I think at the Dooley's, I was singing and someone had, 3 or 4 times a night, the microphone would get bumped and whack you in the lips. It's like, oh, okay, I've got to get out of here. And I remember the next day, the Monday, whatever it was, I think I remember going, I'm going to write songs. That's what I'm going to do. So, and I just remember trying to write a song that day, the whole day, and I was so frustrated because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And but that was the next 2 years of doing that, where I finally got a bunch of songs together, which most of those made it to Feeler.
Oh, they made it. So, because I know a bunch that were on the game made it to Feeler, but okay. So even at that early time,
that's right. Well, the game looks so beautiful. My Time, For Your Way, whatever the other ones were on that were on the game when we did Feeler. The guys wanted to. When I say the guys, Sony, I should say, thought there were some really strong songs there, so they wanted to re-record those again for Feeler. So, and I'm glad we did.
Yeah,
because it really had a big impact.
Yeah. So the game was that independent album that you mentioned, your debut, I suppose. Right.
Sony lost a couple of times.
Sony lost. When it took a while for it to take off. And, we've spoken about the discouragement, but what were you doing? Were you touring? Were you playing? Were you getting better at perfecting your stagecraft? Were you still working at things after the game comes out?
Yeah. I remember thinking I got to a point in Brisbane on the indie scene that I was probably doing really well in Brisbane, but the rest of the country didn't know me. So I could go and play places like the Zoo, which was a 500 capacity, and I could get close to selling that out. And I did my launch at another venue there, which is 500 people. So I was kind of getting to a stage where all the smaller venues lower than that, had less capacities. They were becoming too small. I was becoming sort of too big for those, which wasn't hard to do, I guess. After a while, once you started to get to that level. So I thought I've got to the point now I can just stay in Brisbane. I'm not going to go anywhere. So now I've got to get away, and I've got to try and go somewhere where I can play to more people. And Melbourne was the place to go to. That was the scene.
Yeah.
So I was really confident. I think that the Brisbane scene had really worked well for me, and I was confident that I could go to Melbourne. I could really get a good following down there, because I just thought, doing the independent way, building up the live touring and having a crowd there and people that are buying your album, you can earn some good money from that, and it keeps you going for a while. So that's really the path I wanted to go. I really was interested in signing to a major label. But I think, after a couple of years in Melbourne, it was getting pretty difficult. And as I said, I think probably I was just getting a bit older too, and I was thinking, okay, this is a bit tough. So when the opportunity came along with the major, I was still nervous. Very nervous. It took me like about a week to sign the deal, because I was just didn't know, what was going to happen. And you hear all these stories, but I got to the point where I thought, look, if I can give these guys the best that I have, then they're going to take it as far as they can. And that's what I kind of went with, that attitude, and thought, let's just see how far they can take it. So I was lucky. But in that period of 2 years in Melbourne was just really about hard, trying to get, well, back then there's no MP3s.
No,
you had a disc, and so I had a couple of songs on a disc, or I think an EP or something at that stage that I had. What was the game? I can't remember. I would have to go around in my combi, drive around Melbourne, and drop these CDs off and work out who the booking agent was for each venue. Yeah. And so I was just constantly doing that. It took me like 6 to 8 months to just get a gig.
Wow.
So the whole time I was kind of starting to form a band down there. Met some players, so we would just rehearse a bit. I ended up getting a little gig at the Provincial Hotel, I think, in Melbourne and Fitzroy, and it was just a small little spot that we could go and play, and if I could get 10, 15 people there, that was kind of a good crowd.
Wow.
There's a couple of venues like that I just started to play. So after 6, 8 months, it was kind of, I started to get a little bit known to all the booking agents, and then once they saw me play, they were like, got you. And I just felt too, if people can see me play, then they'll know that it's good, and it's gonna be around for a while. I felt the music was going to be around for a while. Yeah. Not the sort of music that's just, here today, gone tomorrow. So that was the big thing, is just getting in front of people and trying to build it up. And then, it was just kind of like the crowd was building, and everyone was going, love your songs, and it was just slowly building up.
And then you signed that deal with Sony BMG, I think it was at the time, and Feeler comes out, and it spends, 2.5 years in the top 100? Like, it's a huge success. Were you prepared for it? Were you had that? No. No, okay.
No. I remember talking to the guys at Sony, and they said, look, our goal for this album is if we can sell 25,000 albums for this, then that's a great thing. And I remember thinking, wow, 25,000, that's huge. Yeah. It's not going to do that. Thinking, wow. So that was huge. I was I recorded the album, and I kind of fell into a little bit of a post-album blues, we used to call it. I think I just had a real fear of this failing, and I thought, this is my one chance. And if this doesn't work, that's it. Sony aren't going to want to work with me again. I'm 32 now. Like this, I think I had so much pressure on this body of work that it had to work for me. And I thought, once I'd recorded it and we'd finished it and the mixes were there, and I was just like, you know what? I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear the beauty in that album. And it is a great album, and I couldn't hear it at the time. And I've apologised to Paul McKercher so many times now, who was the producer of Feeler, because I just couldn't hear it. And, I think, I don't even know what I said, but in interviews, I think I talked it down, and I couldn't hear it. And as things started to take off, it was even affecting me more, because I was going, how's this working? You know, it just took me a while to kind of really get around the fact that this was working. Like when Feeler took off first, Feeler just went across Triple J, and then all the I think Triple M are the first ones to go, hey, we want this guy, we want this music, you know, why haven't we got it? And then it was just all the other commercial stations going, we want it too. And I remember Sony saying to me, look, we've never had an artist where we've had commercial radio saying, we want this person, why haven't we got the music? And Sony did a really great thing in the early days where they had 3 new acts that were coming out, and I was one of them, and they sat down with all the producers of the commercial radio stations, and they also thought that my music wouldn't work that well either. And they didn't have any high expectations. They thought 25,000, if they could do that, that's great. I still am stunned we've had the commercial success we've had because it's not pop commercial music, you know. And
it's at almost 500,000, is it now? Or
yeah, it's over that now, yeah.
Is it? Right.
Yeah.
Which for Australia is huge.
It's huge, yeah. But it's not the sort of music that you would expect that would work. But the guys had a really good plan of getting these 3 acts that were coming out. And so when they got the guys, the producers of the stations to come around, and they cooked them dinner. So they cooked them dinner, and they sat down in the lounge in some unit somewhere, or an apartment, and they played these 3 acts. And they played some songs, and I was the first one they played because they thought, well, let's just get this guy out of the road. This is a new guy we've got. And they were honest with me, and they said that's what we did. And I was like, that's fine, you know, that's cool. But they said the reaction we got off all of these guys, they couldn't believe it, is that everyone was going, who's that? We want that music.
Wow.
That's great. Because that style of music was just so fresh.
Yeah.
There was nothing sounding like it at that stage, you know. And probably just everyone was due for a change, you know. So nothing sounded like it. So it stood out, and everyone wanted a piece of it. So when, you know, Feeler came out, it had Triple J was all across it, and then it just suddenly went from, you know, across all the stations. And Feeler was, I guess, took me from, we'd started a tour, and I remember, I'll still talk about this show, because it was the 3rd or 4th show on the tour. I think we went to Albury first, and Albury sort of hadn't cottoned onto it, and was still playing to 200 people or something like that. It was pretty good. And anyway, went to Sydney, and it was bar Broadway, and I remember driving to the gig. I think the capacity is 400 people or something, 450. And we went to the sound check, came back to the hotel, went to go back in to do the show, and suddenly there's this lineup right around the pub, right down the street.
Right.
And I was thinking, oh, shit, there's someone else playing down the road, and all these guys are going to see that, you know, so we're not going to get anyone. I was thinking, no, it's who's playing around here that's, you know, a competition.
Yeah.
But everyone was there to see the show, you know, and myself and the band, we walked in and getting ready to come on stage, and it was just like this buzz and energy in the room. I was like, wow, it's pretty pumped. We're all sort of peeping out the curtain and thinking, wow, this is pretty full house. I've never had this before, never experienced this before.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to the band, I'm going to just go and I'm going to sort of break the ice and see what these guys are like. I'm just going to do a solo song first. So I played 10 Foot Tall, which is the last song of Feeler. I wouldn't think anyone would know that song. Came out, played that song, and people sang it back to me. And then you can suddenly see all the band peeping out going, holy shit, like what is going on? But, you know, it came on, it was just word for word, songs all back to us all night. And yeah, I was blown away.
What a moment.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah. And like I said, that's the gig I talk about when everyone says, what's that gig? And there's been many amazing, probably better gigs than that one.
Sure.
As in playing to a crowd of thousands and people singing that, you know, but that moment that you realise, wow, that was pretty amazing, pretty special. The first time I'm playing a song that I didn't think would be known to these guys, 10 Foot Tall.
Yeah.
And it's word for word back.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, so suddenly it worked. And the post-album blues still had just started to kick in, and I still didn't understand why this was happening, and I couldn't hear anything good about the album. And I was struggling because I thought, I don't like it, and everyone else does. And I was kind of upset about that because I was like, this is not the way it should be. I'm supposed to love this, and everyone else is supposed to love it too. And it was 8 years later. I hadn't listened to this album from start to finish because I just couldn't do it. I'd kind of get through part of one song and I'd skip to the next, and I'd skip to the next, and I'd just stop it. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand my voice, all these different things.
Wow.
And 8 years later, Darren Middleton from Powderfinger just sent me a text and said, mate, just listen to Feeler. What a great album.
Right.
So 8 years later, I'm going, far out. Is it? Is this a good album? And I thought, I still haven't listened to it. So I said, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to put the headphones on, I'm going to play this from start to finish. I'm not going to be critical of it. Just listen to it from start to finish. Don't stop it. Just put up with it.
Yeah.
And so I did. I sat down and got in a quiet place and turned the lights off and just sat there, eyes closed, and listened to the album from start to finish. And this feeling of positivity was just coming through me, going, wow, actually, that's a good song. That sounds really good too. That's great.
Wow.
That's not too bad either. Suddenly towards the end, I finished and I just went, wow, it's actually really, it's a great album.
One of the last things I wanted to ask you about Feeler is that with the song So Beautiful, which went on to be a big hit, but I understand that, because that song's almost 5 minutes long, and I believe that the record company actually talked to you or wanted you to cut the third verse to shorten it, and you refused. But I think that's really interesting because you've just said before, there's a lot riding on this record for you, and now you have the backing of a major label, and they're giving you advice on songwriting, but you still have the self-belief to go, no, you're wrong, I want to keep it like this. Where did that self-belief come from?
Well, I think being an independent artist, there's a little bit of that in there with me. The guys wanted, for the cover too, they wanted this, and I was like, no, just let's get something a bit better. So the Feeler cover is, me off a little bit walking with a pair of shoes and sitting in the background, but it's just not so close up with me. And it's a great cover. It's a really nice cover. And then this other thing was the song, and there's a couple of reasons that I thought I didn't want to change it. One was it doesn't make sense. So I get the third verse, it doesn't mean anything. It's just not going to work. And the guy's like, yeah, but radio aren't going to play a song that's 3 minutes long. I said, well, I don't care. And I said, I don't think it should be on radio anyway. It's not a commercial.
Right.
It's not a commercial single. This is nearly 5 minutes. It is what it is. And so they really tried to talk me into it. So can we edit something? Can we take something else? I said, no. I said, if you guys want to take this to the commercial radio, go for your life, but this song won't be changing. And they went, okay, well, all right, well, let's see how we go. Because they kept saying, this is going to be a big song. And I kept saying, this isn't going to be a big song. You guys don't know what you're talking about. But I stood my ground. And I just said, no, it's not going to work. Yeah. And so the guys, to their credit too, they went, that's fine. Well, let's just take it in. And we if that's what you want to do, we'll do it.
Right.
And so that song was just being smashed for years. I was blown away. I didn't think that was going to be that successful, but it was such a big song, such a powerful song. I think a lot of people didn't really, you talked about before about the lyrical content, how it can be a little bit misleading in the way that which I like songs that do that. It's up in the air which way it could go, what it's about. And this song was really a very beautiful song, which was, someone said in the press, it was the best fuck you song of 2004,
right.
Which I thought was really well put. Because it was nice, nicely sung, and about, someone that you really thought was an arsehole, but that song was inspired by not one person, but a group of people who I was going to meet a friend a night. It was after one of my cover gigs, actually. And I went down to a local hotel in Brisbane, and I was just waiting for them to turn up, and just a group of pretentious people came in, arrogant, pretentious people. I just don't have time for those sort of people. And I sat there for about half an hour. I was like, I went home and I wrote that song. I wrote verse 1 and 2 and the chorus that night. It was about 2 in the morning till 5, and then woke up next morning and finished off the final verse, and that was done.
Given that the age all of this happened for you, the fact that you didn't pick up a guitar until 21, 22, as you're playing and as you're trying to make it, you're presumably surrounded by younger musicians and musicians who'd been playing since, their early teens. Did you ever have to deal with imposter syndrome, that sense that I don't really belong here?
I didn't feel that way, no. I think I had, after playing, I go back to the Brisbane scene. The Brisbane scene was really good for me because it was very supportive, and all the bands there on the Brisbane scene were really supportive too of each other. And we used to put gigs on with each other, and you had a lot of people saying positive things about our music. So I think those early days, I felt confident that it was going to work, and I didn't feel intimidated or as though I wasn't good enough. I really felt like I was good enough. I really felt like this was going to work. And when it wasn't working, I was going, why isn't this working? This has got to work somehow. Well, I kind of knew why it wasn't working, but it's like, how do I make it work? What do I need to do? And just roll up your sleeves and work harder. That's really all that was the idea, was just to do that and get out there and get in front of people and play. So, and I didn't feel that I was that much older, really. Probably the guys that I was hanging out with were guys that had been around for a while, and I became sort of quite friendly with them. So they had been around for a while. They were probably in their mid-20s, and I was kind of hanging out with those guys. So, the younger acts, I didn't think about them. I didn't even think about that. I was just like doing my own thing, and that's and I also wanted to have, a unique sound. It's very different to everyone else too. So I didn't really care what they looked like, how old they were, what they were doing. It was really, this is my journey, what I'm doing, and this is the music that I think is going to work, and it needs to get out there, and people need to hear it. I kind of felt like that's what was going to work, and they'd like it.
Pete, just before we finish up, Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit is due. Are there people you give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
Oh, there's heaps of people. I think, family are big supporters. My kids now, Charlie's 18. He's actually sung a couple of songs live with me now. Just when they were younger, the boys, they were just really supportive too of encouraging me to and my music and telling me how much they liked it. There's a lot of people that work for the label, Sony, that have been, helps my career a lot too, especially in this country. It's hard to thank everyone, but it's, even though you're the one that sits there in the room on your own and writes songs, it's without the other people there. Dylan Liddy, who's been my booking agent, my manager, he's a superstar, that guy. He's just, we met when I first started and he first started booking. So he was very green.
Right.
We learned a lot together along the way. He's now my manager now, and he's just he's the dude. I call him the dude. So
nice.
So it's been a lot of people along the way, that have got me started, and Charlie, who's up in heaven, obviously. There's those guys along the way too.
Yeah, absolutely. Pete, thanks so much for your time, mate. It's been really great to chat with you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rod. Yeah, you too.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Pete for his time, and thank you for listening. Pete's hitting the road in July all the way through to October, so if you live in Australia, keep an eye out for those dates. If you have any feedback on the show or suggestions on who you'd like me to interview, or even if you just want to say hello, please drop me a line at humansofmusic@jaxsta.com. That's humansofmusic, one word, at Jaxsta, JAXSTA.com. This episode was mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale, and the incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, share it amongst your friends and rate and review it. And remember, next time you need to know who wrote a song, who produced a song, who engineered it, who played on it, who sang on it, who did anything on it, head to jaxsta.com for all your official music credit information. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.